Hey everybody, MazzaOnSports here. We're talking all things Baltimore Ravens here on this video. Obviously, I've been mostly talking about the New York Mets, obviously, and now that the season is over, we can get back to we can start talking about more about football and more about the Ravens and obviously more about the Jets and all that stuff. We'll still talk about the baseball playoffs. As a matter of fact, we're going to start mixing up more football and baseball now and soccer and basketball and hockey. I mean, the hockey season has now just begun. Last night, I was watching the Rangers game and the Penguins game, Rangers Penguins last night. During that game, the Penguins won that game 3-0. So the NHL season is off and running. The NBA season will soon be coming up. And the baseball off season, but the NFL season, of course, is in full swing. The MLB postseason is in full swing. So we'll be talking more about that in all these videos and podcasts and shows. Today, we're going to be talking really just about the Baltimore Ravens, of course, and as their season is. I've been meaning to do some Mazza on Ravens, but obviously with the Mets, couldn't really do that. Couldn't find the time. But 5 weeks now have passed in the Baltimore Ravens season. And, well, yeah, it's been a disappointment. To say that they've been the most disappointing team this season would be an understatement. Because they have. I would personally say they have. They've been the most disappointing team in football this season. And again, we could point to the injuries all we want, but they're just not playing good football. We could point to the injuries, but they're just not playing good football, and that's been that way. It seems to me since game one, I think it's kind of hurt them in the locker room, hurt them in the clubhouse, and it's hurt them on the field. And we'll start from the beginning, because again, we haven't really talked about the Ravens much this season. Like I said, I mainly focused on the Mets, but we'll start from week one. And I think that's going to be you could also begin last year in the playoffs in Buffalo. You could start 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, but I think it's fair to start from week one against the Buffalo Bills. A big lead, 15-point lead, and 7 minutes to go. And they lost. They blew that game, and they lost. And I think this team has been searching for a way to get back on track since then. You could not blow that game. Yes, it's only week one, but it was a big week one game against the Buffalo Bills, a team that you lost to the year before, a team that you should have beaten the year before in Buffalo in the playoffs, and you blew that game and lost again. And I think that's affected them since then. Even the following week against the Cleveland Browns, the one game they won this year, that was a game that was pretty tough, at least in the first half of the game. The defense did great against the Browns offense and did a very good job pressuring Joe Flacco and everything. But that game was pretty close through the first half. It wasn't until the second half where the Ravens pulled away and won the game outright. But even that one was pretty close to the first half. And then game 3, they got ran over by the Detroit Lions. I mean, ran over by the Lions. It has been quite a while since I've seen the Ravens at home physically dominated the way Detroit did. It's been quite a while since then. Maybe 2019. Well, you know what? 2019 against the Titans. That was it. 2019 against the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs. That was the last time I think I remember seeing the team get physically beaten up and dominate the line of scrimmage at home like that. I think that was the last time. The Tennessee Titans playoff loss in 2019. And I think that told you right there. And that was also the game Nnamdi Madubuike got hurt, and now he's out for the season. We'll get to the injuries obviously in a bit, but I'll say that quickly. Nnamdi Madubuike, of course, is out for the year, but we'll talk a little about more of the injuries in a minute. But they got physically beaten up by the Detroit Lions. physically beaten up. Then they went to Kansas City and completely embarrassed themselves. That was embarrassing. If we thought Houston was bad, the game this past Sunday against the Texans was bad and embarrassing, Kansas City was a lot more embarrassing because Kansas City has not played great at all this year. And on paper, this is a team that is not as good as the Ravens over the past 2 to 3 years. And yet this team continues to have trouble beating them. This Ravens team, despite the fact that they have the advantage pretty much everywhere on the field against the Chiefs, maybe except quarterback, obviously, because Mahomes is just on another level. It's nothing, it's not really a knock on Jackson at all. It's just Mahomes is on another level. But still, the Ravens, Lamar is great too. He's outstanding. It doesn't take away but the Ravens have all the talent and have the advantage over Kansas City. It's just, you can't beat these guys. You can, and that I think is the biggest problem with this team when they're healthy. They continue to not beat the other AFC big contenders. They can't beat the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. They can never beat the Kansas City Chiefs. As a matter of fact, the one guy that was responsible for the one win against Kansas City Chiefs in 2018 was just recently traded away. We'll get to that. But they got embarrassed against the Chiefs this past couple weeks ago in Kansas City. They got embarrassed. And it's just, again, if you want to match up with these guys, if you want to be a true Super Bowl contender, these are the two teams you have to beat. And by the way, there's now other teams now coming. Did you see Denver against the Philadelphia Eagles? Pretty impressive. The Chargers, okay, they've lost their last 2 games, but they were off to a 3-0 start. I don't know about the Colts and the Jaguars. I'm still not buying them. It's still a nice story, especially with the Colts side with Daniel Jones. It's been a nice story, but I'm still not buying them. Either of these two teams, but it's a nice story, especially with Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. Good story. I'm still just, a little bit not really buying them there. I don't think I'm the only one, but you got to beat. Those are the top contenders in the AFC. Those were the teams that coming into the season, it was you, the Chiefs, and the Bills in the AFC. And not only did you lose to them this season, you lost in embarrassing fashions. You blew that game to the Bills, and then against Kansas City a few weeks later, you got dominated. Absolutely embarrassed and dominated. So this is just not, it's not championship football. It's not. If you want to be a championship football team, you have to beat these teams. You just have to. And the fact that this team can't beat them, and this is, by the way, before most of the injuries. Again, Matabikwe out for the season, but for the most part, this is without most of the injuries. And you can't beat these guys, especially Kansas City when they're clearly at the most vulnerable. Did you see them lose to Jacksonville on Monday night? And you can't beat them. You got dominated, man. It isn't about it at this point. It isn't about, it isn't about the talent. It isn't about the roster. It isn't about the coaches. It's not about one thing. It's about everyone. This is everyone. This is everyone. And then they face Houston, and they're banged up. They're incredibly banged up. But they, again, embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassed. So now what? So now where the Ravens go? Well, they're 1-4. You're facing now a pretty good Rams team this Sunday. You can't stop the pass. Your offense still could move the football, but I think this offense is so strange to me because I know Lamar is hurt, but you still have a lot of talented players on this offense. This isn't, a 2006 Patriots, or heck, I even go far as back with the Ravens, in say 2016, 2017, when Joe Flacco didn't really have much talent around him. This is a team with a lot of talent around whoever is the quarterback. Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill are running backs. Isaiah Likely's back. Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, DeAndre Hopkins. To me, that falls on the coaches. That falls on Todd Monken. If you should be still able to put up some points even without a top 5 quarterback out there. Lamar is Lamar, but you still got guys out there that you can produce with. So that's on you as coaches. But it's everybody. It's everybody right now. This is a 1-4 football team with the worst defense in team history. It's been a long time, quite a while, since the Ravens have had a defense as bad as this one. The 2021 defense wasn't particularly good either, but they weren't this bad. The 2015 defense, while finished the season strong, was not good for the first 2.5 to 3 months of the season. The 2002 defense had its struggles, but they were still competitive. The 2005 defense was pretty darn good, but they had injuries, and their offense stunk. Their offense couldn't score points. Pretty much was the same thing in 07, but 07, their secondary was a little bit worse. But even still, they were competitive and they were tough. All those defenses, especially 02, 05, 07, were tough. They were tough and still made games competitive despite not being at their best. This defense is not competitive at all. And I think that's what's most bizarre. They're just not competitive. Guys are running wide open, and nobody is getting after the quarterback. And they're getting physically beaten at the line of scrimmage. And that's not something you usually see out of a Ravens defense. It's not. And look, we can point to the players that are come and gone, but look, it doesn't matter. You still have a ton of talent on this defense. There's no excuse. The culture's been set. The tone has been set. The mindset's there. The defense, the physicality, what you are as a defense. The Baltimore Ravens, for as much as they've become an offensive team now with Lamar now, their bread and butter and their identity is still on the defensive side of the football. And by the way, on offense, their identity, even of course with Lamar, is still running the football. It has been like that for the Baltimore Ravens for 25, 26 years. It has been like that for 25 or 26 or so years. Their identity is defense running the football. And right now, they are doing none of those things. That has been their identity no matter what. Pre-Flacco and Jackson, and now during Flacco and Jackson. That has always been their identity. Defense running the football. Doesn't matter. And right now, they're not doing any of that. They can't play good defense, and they sure as heck aren't running the football as effectively as they should be. And that also falls on Derrick Henry. We'll talk about him in just a moment because his season right now has been, you feel for him. You do. You feel for him. But it's a struggle to watch him. But we'll get to him in just a moment. The defense, though, has got to be better. And I know they're going through injuries. But it's embarrassing. This is not the Baltimore Ravens defense. There are teams in the NFL. That pride themselves on defense, and the Ravens are one of them. It's the Ravens, it's the Bucks, it's the Steelers, it's the Bears. Um, there's all these teams. All these teams have built themselves on defense. And when the Ravens don't play defense, something's going on. That's not good. You need the Baltimore Ravens have to field good defense. It's just who they are. It's their identity. It's what's made them successful for a long time now. For them to not field a good defense right now with the talent they have, injuries or not, is baffling. And I say injuries or not because we saw it in week 1 when they were healthy. We saw it in week 1 when they were healthy. Josh Allen, he's Josh Allen. He's Josh Allen. He's fantastic. He's top 3, top 2, whatever quarterback in the league. Him, Lamar, Mahomes, Burrow, all of those guys. He's right up there with all of them. He's the reigning MVP. He's great. But you're supposed to be a great defense. You are supposed to stop him, and you didn't. You didn't. And then you allow the Lions to run all over you like that at home 2 weeks later? Where's the pride? Where's that Ravens defense pride? Where's that pride that's been built for over 2 decades? Where is that pride? To let the Lions are a great football team, not taking anything away. They're a great team. The Lions are a great team, a Super Bowl contender, and they're very well one of the NFC favorites to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. But for them to come into your house and physically dominate you the way they did is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And then you face Kansas City again. And Pat Mahomes, or just the entire team, that entire offense, an offense that is not playing good football, an offense that is having trouble scoring points and running and having good sustainable drives. The Chiefs offense is, and you allowed them to look like the Chiefs offense just a couple of years ago. This Chiefs offense has not been the dominating Chiefs offense in the past, and you allow them to be what they once were just a few years ago. Well, again, Mahomes is great, but you're supposed to actually have an answer for these guys, and you still didn't. The Ravens still haven't had an answer for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense over the past, 8 years now? Since 2018, the Ravens have 8 years and 7 matchups. One, by the way, you were lucky to win, and they have not had an answer. They've not had an answer. 7 games, 8 years, and they've not had an answer. Not just the Ravens defense, but the entire team. It also goes to the Ravens offense. We'll get to the offense in a second overall. I got to talk about the offense too. Yeah. And then you face Houston. What was that? Again, what was that? I know you have players missing. I know you do. But what was that? CJ Stroud's a good quarterback, but you made him look like Joe Montana out there. You made him look like Tom Brady out there. What was that? The game was over by the first half. Ravens fans were out the building by halftime. What was that? It's baffling. And for a team that prides itself on defense and prides itself on also playing well at home, making PSI Net Stadium, now M&T Bank Stadium, your home, your place to win. The Ravens have always been a great road team, especially in the playoffs, but really especially in the playoffs. But at home, they have made M&T Bank Stadium, PSI Net, now M&T Bank Stadium, one of the toughest places to win football games. The Ravens and their success at home have made it tough for the opposing team to come in and win. Well, you're 1-2 at home this year. You're 1-2, and you very well may be 1-3 after this Sunday. I mean, this is this stadium needs to be your place to win games, and it has been for years. And it starts with the defense. Starts with that. I don't know what I watched on Sunday in terms on the defense, but I can't see that. But you can't see that again. You can't see that again. You can't. And the film was unacceptable. The game was unacceptable. And let's go to the offense. First two games, boy, oh boy, they look great. First two games, or at least in the second half against the Browns, first game against Buffalo, they were great. Second half against the Browns, they were great. But they couldn't run the football. They were having trouble running the football. And then Detroit and Kansas City. Again, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was. Against Detroit and against Kansas City. The offensive line performance, Lamar holding on to the ball too long and taking too many sacks on balls that he should just thrown away. And again, Lamar is the quarterback that's going to make plays because he's just got that incredibly gifted ability. But there are times where you just got to throw the ball away, my man. You've just got to throw the ball away. You just got to throw the ball away sometimes. And he doesn't do that. He hasn't done that he hasn't done that in his entire career because he's also made a career in making amazing plays happen, when it looks like he's going to get sacked or tackled or, whatever. But sometimes you do have to just throw the ball away. The running game. Where's the running game, man? Not only with Lamar, but Derrick Henry, Justice Hill. Why wasn't Keaton Mitchell activated until this past Sunday against the Texans? And even so, why is he not getting any offensive snaps? He barely got 2, 3, I think the other day against Houston, a couple, or at least got the ball twice. Why is he not getting any offensive snaps? And let's talk about Derrick Henry. First, let's talk about the offensive line, actually. I talked about Lamar. Let's talk about the offensive line. I talked about Monken earlier. Let's talk about the offensive line. What was that? What am I watching here? The game against Detroit, 7 sacks? Really? Kansas City? What was that? Houston? What was that? And again, I know you're missing guys, Ronnie Stanley, but what was that? What was that? They've got to be better than that. They've got to be better than the offensive line. They've got to be better than that. And Derrick Henry. Look, we all knew that there was. Look, he's in his 30s. The Ravens gave him an extension. Of course they did, because he had a great year last year. But you all knew that there might come that season where he's going to hit the wall. That every team, that every running back, and that's fine. Look, that's just the running back position now. Maybe this is the year for Henry, and you can tell it's really affecting him. That fumble against Buffalo, boy, oh boy, it has set the tone for his season to this point. And then he fumbled against Cleveland. Baltimore recovered that one. But then he had another big fumble against Detroit, and you can tell right there that ESPN showed it. He went to the sideline, took the helmet off, slammed it to the ground, and he kind of just leaned on the chair like that, kind of leaned on the locker, on the bench like this, like he couldn't. It hurts, it stinks to watch, obviously, and you feel for him, because he's such a great player and he's a hard worker, and he busts his ass every day in every game, and he wants to win. He's a guy on this team I can look at and say that's a winner. He wants to win. So he's going through it. And these last couple of games, it seems like now he's running to make sure he protects the football, because he went through the first 3 straight weeks of fumbling the ball, and because of that, because he's not hitting the holes as much. He hasn't hit the holes as well as the last 2 weeks. He's not getting the bursts he had the last 2 weeks in these last 2 games. He's not getting the yards. He's not scoring. I think those fumbles are kind of affecting him now. I think he needs to get out of it. But what can help him, I think, is activating Keaton Mitchell and giving him more carries. And I think John Harbaugh has to think about that, especially now with the backup quarterback, which leads us back to, again, what happened in Kansas City. Lamar Jackson hurt his hamstring, and they say he's out for at least 2 weeks. So he missed this game against Houston. Looks like he missed practice today as a second practice he's missed in a row leading up to the Rams game. So he's going to miss this game against the Rams. So it looks like it's going to be Cooper Rush again, but I think even Harbaugh threw in Tyler Huntley. I would just let Cooper Rush play. I don't know. Look, no offense to Tyler Huntley. We've seen Tyler Huntley. He throws you. I don't know what he can do. Cooper Rush, I think, at least gives you a better chance to win than Tyler Huntley does. But, Lamar hurts his hamstring. He should be back by the bye week. So, or at least after the bye week, which is after this game against the Rams. But they got to run this. But they got to run the football. They've got to run the football. They've got to, and that's on Derrick Henry, who's got to turn the switch back on and just put the fumbles behind him and just be Derrick Henry. Be Derrick Henry. And Keaton Mitchell has got to get more carries. I would say 10 to 15 for Keaton Mitchell. Give him the ball. Give Justice Hill his carries. This is a team that needs to run the football. And if you're Tom Monken, dude, you got to scheme up better. You got to give better schemes and better protections and get, say, Flowers and Andrews and Likely and Bateman and Hopkins all open, man. You got to get them open. You got to have better scheme and better. I against Houston, how many third down and long bubble screens did you have? I understand the offensive line isn't very good. I understand Cooper Rush obviously doesn't have the mobile capabilities. Doesn't have the mobility and the rushing ability of Lamar, but you can't just do third and mediums and third and long wide receiver screen passes and expect and hope that Zay Flowers gets 10 to 15 yards out of it. You can't do that. You got to scheme some guys open. You got to call some good play calls and get those guys open and help out Cooper Rush. And Rashad Bateman, you can't be stopping up on your routes, man. There was an interception, one of the three that Cooper Rush threw. It was, again, way late in the game. Game's already over, but he stops on his route and causes another interception. You can't. Guys got to keep playing. Got to keep playing. Got to keep playing. Keep playing. Keep playing. Play. Make a play. And that goes to Harbaugh. Look, I've been a John Harbaugh guy for his entire run, 18 years. I think he's a great head coach. I think he's a top 5 coach in the league. I think right now, if he were to retire today, he's might be a Hall of Fame head coach. I think he is. But if this season continues to get out of hand the way it has been so far through his first 5 games, it's hard to picture him or imagine him being back next year as the Ravens head coach. It's hard to imagine him being back as a head coach next year if the season continues to kind of spiral the way it's going. And for a lot of Ravens fans, that might be a sense of relief. That might be a breath of fresh air. That might be a hope. The scapegoat is gone. The scapegoat is gone. The guy that's held us back for years is gone. We'll finally win a championship. I reg the caution because I think this is far beyond a coaching thing. I think this is a player thing. I think this is very much a player thing too. I think this is also what I've seen over the past 8 or 9 years, what I've seen over the past 8 years, what I've seen since 2018. A lot of it's players too. A lot of it's players as well. But Harbaugh has to get control of this. Harbaugh has to be more precise and more clear with the press, especially when it comes to injuries. The whole Matabikwe thing was no one really knew what was going on until we finally knew, and I know Harbaugh is like this. I know Harbaugh is like this when it comes to injuries, but you've got to be more precise and more clear to everybody. And then we find out Nnamdi's out for the season. It's like, it sucks for him. It's horrible for him. And he's a great player. He's worked hard. He's earned his contract that he got about a year ago, 2 years ago. So, and this is a neck injury, so you don't know how long this could be for him. Could this be just the end of the year? Could it go into next year? Who knows? Neck injuries are tough. Could cause retirements. Neck injuries, back injuries, whatever, except, these kind of injuries cause players to retire. Look at the Ravens defensive coordinator himself, Zach Orr. He had to retire due to a serious neck injury. But Harbaugh's going to have to keep the team together and try to battle through it because, and talk about in a second, the Ravens could still get back into this. And that's the crazy part. But he's going to have to keep this team in order and keep this team together. He's going to have to keep this team together. If you can keep the team together and rally the team and go on a run, that'll be one heck of a job. But does he have that in him? We'll find out. But this is getting a little bit out of hand here. It's getting a little bit out of hand. So, and this. So Harbaugh's going to have to keep the team together and try to battle his way out of it. But this is going to be tough for him. And if the Ravens, let's say the Ravens do let him go at the end of the season, who's going to come in that's better? Who? Todd Monken? No. Who? Who's going to come in who's going to be better than him? It's tough. It's tough. And not only that, think about that. The next head coach of the Ravens is going to come in with a tall order, winning a Super Bowl in a short couple of years, in at least the next 2 or 3 years, with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. It's a tough call. It's a tough ask. Just ask Mike LaFleur how tough that was when he came as head coach of the Packers with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. It's tough. You only have a short window, really. Or actually, in Rodgers' game, in that case, it was Rodgers who had the short window because Jordan Love was already drafted. Or they would draft Jordan Love after that. They drafted Jordan Love about a year and a half or so after or a year after Mike LaFleur became the coach. Yeah, it was a year after. But with Lamar, he's 29, going to be 30. There's still more years left. That head coach, he's going to be the one with the short leash because you have to win a championship with Lamar Jackson in his prime too. So it's tough. It won't be an easy spot to come and coach to. It's the Ravens obviously are a good team and they'll win games, but I don't think this year will take that away, obviously, but they're going to still win games. They're still going to win, but that's the good part. The other thing is you're going to have to win the Super Bowl because people are going to expect you to win the Super Bowl. So it's a tough task for the new head coach. And again, who are you going to find that's better? It's a tough one. You really have to get that right. And the Ravens might go back to the Brian Billick well and pick an offensive coach. When they hired Brian Billick, they wanted him in '99. They wanted him to bring his offensive philosophy and offensive prowess, like he did in Minnesota, to Baltimore, to complement an ever-growing defense. But obviously, that never really materialized because the Ravens never really had a great offense under Billick because they never really had a quarterback. They went through quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback, from Eric Zaire to Tony Banks to Trent Dilfer to Elvis Gerbach to Randall Cunningham to Kyle Bowler to Jeff Blake to Chris Redmond to Troy Smith to Steve McNair, Anthony Wright. They went through so many quarterbacks from 99 to 2007 during Billick's time. They can never have a consistent offense. They had players, of course, Ogden, Militalo, Jamal Lewis, Mike Flynn, Todd Heap, Shannon Sharp, Kadri Ishmael, Brandon Stokely. They did sign Derek Mason later in 2005, but they never really had the quarterback to complement that. So the offense would struggle to score points. Matt Stover and Jamal Lewis and Heap would be the ones to bring the points for the most part, and the defense would have to be great. So you would have to go to, but really, I think that's where the Ravens would have to go in terms of finding a new head coach if they decide to move on from Harbaugh next year. They'd have to go to the offensive well, find an offensive coach. I don't think they go defense because the league is different now. The league is so much more different than what it was, especially when the Ravens made the hire of John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh was a special teams coach, special teams guy, and they were looking at the offensive well and Jason Garrett, but they went with John Harbaugh, and hey, that paid off pretty well, didn't it? But they might go back to the offensive well here. Again, offensive coach who can, because the next coach you have to get needs to benefit Lamar Jackson, fit Lamar Jackson, and make Lamar comfortable and have a good relationship with Lamar. Your next head coaching hire revolves around Lamar Jackson. So, but that's obviously months down the road. Let's see how the Ravens finish the season, because there is still a chance that they can come back here. All these injuries, they're going to slowly get guys back. They're going to slowly get, as a matter of fact, in practice today, just today, Pat Ricard and Marlon Humphrey both came back in practice. Those are big. Now, I don't think Pat Ricard is going to play. That was the first time Pat Ricard practiced since August 14th. I think Jeff Shreve, this is according to Jeff Shreve back of The Athletic. So probably not going to play this week, even so. I'd be surprised. Marlon Humphrey, we'll see. Probably now that he's back in practice today, probably 50-50. Kyle Hamilton returned to practice yesterday, so he should be back. He should be ready to play this Sunday. So it looks like, again, they're going to get pieces back. Maybe not all this week. Still, Roquan and Lamar Jackson were missing from practice today. But they're going to get guys back. They're going to get guys back. And the rest of their schedule after this game against the Rams, gets a little, not say easier, because no game in the NFL is easy, but certainly they'll be favored because they're going to get guys back with this schedule, especially after the bye week. They face the Rams and get the bye week. So after the bye week, they'll presumably get some guys back. Then they face Chicago at home. They'll be favored. At Miami Thursday night, they should be favored. At Minnesota, they should be favored. At the Browns, who are going to be playing a rookie quarterback, they should be favored. Home against the Jets, they should be favored. Home against the Bengals on Thanksgiving, they should be favored for that one. So their next tough game, really on this schedule after the bye week, is the Pittsburgh Steelers game on December 7th. Now, they're going to have to win all those games, especially if they lose on – if the Ravens can somehow pull off an upset against the Rams on Sunday, that would go a long way. And plus, this team could use a win right now before the bye. But it's going to be hard and tough to beat the Rams. But man, if they can just get one and pull it off, that could go a long way. And it's the Rams coming from the West to the East Coast to play a 1:00 game. That does help in a way, but if they don't beat the Rams, you're going to have to win all those games. There is truly no room for error. But the thing is, this team is very talented and will get their guys back. And I expect them to make adjustments to get better. You will be favored in all those games. It requires you winning 6 in a row, but this team is good enough, especially with its roster and coaches, to win 6 in a row. They're good enough to win 6 in a row. That's the crazy part about this team. They're good enough to win 6 in a row, and you wouldn't be surprised that they're 6-5. Or 7-5. My math. My math. But they're good enough to at least win 6 in a row and be 7-5 by the time they face the Steelers. But that means you can't lose any more games. You lose this one, you got to win 6 in a row. But of course, they can win 6 in a row. They can. They just got to get their guys back, get healthy, make some adjustments at the bye week, and go from there. In terms of Zach Orr, to talk about that quickly, because I know that's obviously been the big talk. Obviously, should the Ravens fire Zach Orr? Maybe let Chuck Pagano, who's now back, who's now, of course, as he's the senior, let me get this right, the senior secondary assistant coach. Pretty sure that's his title. Let me just double check that. They gave our man Chuck Pagano some title. I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check. Yes, the senior secondary coach. That was it. The senior secondary coach. They gave him a title. But he's back on the coaching staff. Point is, he's back on the coaching staff for the first time since 2011. Went back when he was the defensive coordinator. Could they theoretically fire Zach Orr at the bye week? I know Harbaugh didn't say anything about that. Harbaugh still was talked about how highly he praises Zach Orr and how much he likes him as a coach. But boy, the way this defense is playing, I don't know. And I like Zach Orr. He's a good story, good dude. I think he's a good coach. But if your defense is playing as bad as this right now, when you're a team that's supposed to win the Super Bowl, yeah, it's tough. It's real tough. You might have to make a change. And I think Pagano, sure, would make a lot of sense. Would they do that after the bye week? Maybe we'll see. But, Pagano would be the guy that would make sense to be the defensive coordinator if the Ravens were to make a move like that. But the Ravens have never done that before, by the way. They've never made a midseason defensive coordinator change. Never. 2002, 2002, Marvin Lewis left and he was trying to become a head coach, but he ended up being the defensive coordinator, assistant head coach at the Washington Commanders, back then Redskins at the time. Mike Nolan became the defensive coordinator. That was at the end. That was, of course, going into the 2002 season. In the off season before that, they've obviously had a couple of midseason changes to offensive coordinator. Most famously, 2012 with Cam Cameron when they were 9-2, 9-3, whatever they were, for Jim Caldwell, and that ended up paying off. They made another offensive coordinator change in mid 2016 from Mark Trestman to Marty Mornhinweg. But they've never really made a midseason change at defensive coordinator. Marvin Lewis, the defensive coordinator, all the way till the end of the 2001 season. All the way to the end of the 2001 season. Then Mike Nolan was the head coach, and then eventually in 2003, after he spent a year in Washington, he became the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Then Mike Nolan was the defensive coordinator. Then at the end of the 2004 season, he took a head coaching job with the San Francisco 49ers. And then, of course, Rex Ryan, defensive coordinator from 2005 to 2008. He leaves to become the head coaching job for the New York Jets in 2009. Greg Madison was the defensive coordinator for 2 years, followed by Chuck Pagano, who in 2011, who, of course, became the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Dean Pease was the defensive coordinator from 2012 to 2018. I believe it was 2018 or 19. Yeah, it was 18. And then Don Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2022 or 2021. Then, of course, Mike McDonald, who then became the head coach for 2 years, and he became, of course, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and so on and so forth. They've never really made a midseason change at defensive coordinator. So this would be a first. My memory serves me right. This would be a first. So we'll see. But they're going to get players back. And they got a favorable schedule after the bye. It's going to take a winning streak. It's going to take winning games. It's going to take a winning streak. It's going to take being good for all 4 quarters for all 6 of these games, leading up to that big December 7th game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see. But the Ravens are now kind of in I don't want to say crossroads, but certainly at a very interesting point in this era of Ravens football, right? This is now year 8 with Lamar Jackson. You're expecting to win a Super Bowl by now. And you had 2019, didn't win it. You had 2023, didn't win it. You had last year, didn't win it. You've had playoff heartbreak after playoff heartbreak in 18 and 19 and 20 and 22 and 23, especially, and 24 last year. And now you start the season off 1-4 here. And sometimes, you have a season where you just have a down year, right? And nothing really goes right for you, right? The 2015 Ravens can relate. So many years where things went right for them. And then 2015, just nothing went right. And they had a tough year, went 5-11, had a lot of guys hurt. Sometimes, you have seasons like that. But for the Ravens, this was a team that was made to go to a Super Bowl. They were everyone's pick to win the Super Bowl because they all felt that this is the year. 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 This is the year for the Ravens to go all the way and win the Super Bowl. Buffalo has lost pieces. The Chiefs are not the same. This is the year for the Ravens. Now they're 1-4, quarter of the way through the season. It's now mid-October, and they're 1-4, and they're looking at 1-5 right now if they can't win this game against the Rams. So we'll see what we'll see, because this is a tough part for the Ravens here in this era of Ravens football, and there's going to be some decisions to make, and the Ravens made a decision. Odafe Oweh was traded this just a few days ago to the Los Angeles Chargers. He was traded to and the Ravens seem to be looking to improve the secondary, because again, the secondary has been a problem for them. It's been a mess for them all season long, which has been a surprise, because a lot of us expected the Ravens secondary to be maybe the best in football, but it's been a bit disappointing. It's been disappointing. So the Ravens went and signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson to help them out with that. Now, see what happens there. But they went to go sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They added him. And then Odafe Oweh got traded to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Ravens got more help in the secondary in this trade. Safety Alohi Gilman of the Chargers, in exchange for also some draft picks, was a part of the deal. So the Ravens brought in this deal, along with draft picks, brought in another safety to add along with C.J. Gardner-Johnson to try to improve the secondary, to try to improve it. Jaire Alexander's been a big disappointment. Nate Wiggins has actually not had a great year so far. Malachi Starks is still a rookie. Chidobe Awuzie is injured. So Marlon Humphrey had a couple of tough games to begin the season, then he got hurt, and now he came back to practice today, so hopefully he's on his way back. So the secondary's been a disappointment. Hamilton is really kind of on an island right now, Kyle Hamilton. He's been hurt. He missed the game against Houston on Sunday, came back to practice yesterday, so it looks like, again, hopefully he's playing this week. But he's kind of on an island right now in that secondary, Kyle Hamilton. And what makes Kyle Hamilton so good is that he's so versatile. You like to use him more. So hopefully with the additions of Johnson and Gorman, with the additions of those two safeties, or the addition of and Gilman, with Johnson and Gilman, you can start to move Kyle Hamilton around a bit. Linebacker, nickel, safety, corner, blitz packages, et cetera, stopping the run, doing all that stuff, tackling, because that's what makes Kyle Hamilton so good, his versatility. That's what makes him so good. So hopefully with those additions, they can start, Zach Orr and the defense can start, and Harbaugh and the defense can start coaching up more and trying to make up and trying to improve this defense, because boy, there's nowhere to go for this defense but up. With how much this defense has struggled, there's nowhere to go but up. They got to improve. So, but this is where they're at. And there's going to be some other decisions to make if this team continues to struggle. Mark Andrews is only on for one more season. He's on a free agent year too, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is on a free agent year too. He's a free agent at the end of the season. Do they trade him? They didn't trade him in the offseason. Will they trade him now? And just say, and tell Likely, and then they go to Isaiah Likely and say, all right, you're the new tight end one now. You're the new feature tight end. Jaire Alexander signed a 1-year contract. He's been a disappointment so far, sure, but he's still very talented. He's on a 1-year contract. If you could still get draft picks for him, and you're 1-5 or so, 1-6, 1-7, whatever, 2-8, 2-6, or 2 and whatever, do you trade him? Try to get some draft picks out of him? DeAndre Hopkins, you sign him to a 1-year contract. He's been pretty good. Hopkins has been pretty good to start the season. If you still continue to struggle, do you trade him? I don't think they trade Tyler Linderbaum. Linderbaum is a free agent. He's a free agent too. I think they'd like to have him back. He might hit the market. Oh, and then there's Lamar Jackson. He still hasn't signed an extension. Now, he's not a free agent, of course, or anything like that, but, the Ravens were supposed to get an extension done with him this offseason, and that never materialized. He entered this season without a brand new contract. So you still have to give Jackson his extension. I thought that was very surprising that they didn't give him an extension. I thought they would get an extension done by at least training camp. And here he is still playing unsigned. Again, just like in 2021 and 2022. Again. But, I'm trying to think of other players, but that's where we are right now with this team. There's going to be some interesting trades. Maybe possible more trades are coming. Who knows? Odafe was a free agent at the end of the season. So, and they have Mike Green on the roster, who probably might get more snaps. Tavius Robinson has looked pretty good to start the season. If there's any bright spots in the defense, Tavius Robinson's been pretty good to begin the season. Of course, Kyle Van Noy. But speaking of defensive players that need to play better, I love him. Roquan Smith. He had that great game against Cleveland. He was fantastic against the Cleveland Browns. Aside from that, he's been a non-factor this season. You need better from him. You need more from him. And I love Roquan. He's a great player. One of the true middle linebackers still going in this league. But, he's got to play better. He's got to play a lot better than this. And he's unfortunately hurt. Looks like he's going to miss this week. But when he comes back, he's got to play a lot better than the way he's played so far this season. And he's better. He knows it. He knows he's one of those players that knows he's better than how he's played. So this is going to be an interesting part. We'll discuss more about this as the Ravens season goes on. We'll have another video on after their game against the Rams to kind of recap the Rams game and talk about where they are coming into the bye week and everything like that. So we'll talk more about it. But this is a interesting part of the Ravens season that, of course, none of us thought we would be. We all thought the Ravens would be. They had a tough stretch to begin the season. They did, at Buffalo, home against the Lions, home against the Texans, at the Chiefs. This was tough. Cleveland was the one game we looked at and say, okay, yeah, division opponent could be tough, obviously. And it was through the first half, but they should still win that game. And they did. But the other many were going to be tough. And this one's tough too, the Rams. The Ravens had a pretty tough schedule to begin the season. But you definitely did not expect 1-4, possibly 1-5. And there's a lot of reasons for it, especially now with the injuries, but you didn't expect it. So the Ravens are kind of in a pickle here. They're in a tough spot. And they need to fight and battle their way out of it. They need to battle their way out of it. Show some true resiliency. Because this regular season is not going to come as easy as the past couple regular seasons. Or especially the last two regular seasons where things just came easy for them. This is going to have to be a battle. A tough one. You're probably going to have to get a wild card now. If you're 1-5, 1-4, you're probably not winning the division. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it may be mid-October, but they look like they have the division, right now to win. But then again, we'll see. Still a long season, but right now, the way you've played, the way the Ravens have played, and the Steelers being 3-1, they have the division right now. So, but the Ravens are going to have to battle this out. You have 3 wild card spots. They have to battle. And if the Ravens turn it on, get hot, and get in as a 3rd wild card spot, they might be the best 3rd wild card spot ever. And since the NFL introduced since the NFL, I should say, brought back, since the NFL, I should say, brought back the 3rd wild card spot because back then, before division realignment, there was 3 divisions, 3 wild card spots. There were 3 divisions and 3 wild cards: the East, the Central, and the West. There were 3 divisions and 3 wild card spots. So I should say, technically brought back the 3rd wild card spot. But in the current division alignment era, post 2002, this is since 2002, this is the first time that the NFL has, in this era, since 2002 division realignment, they've had 3 wildcard spots, over the past couple of years. The Ravens, if they were to sneak into the playoffs, if they were to get hot, sneak in as a 3rd wild card in this current era of the 3rd wild card spot of the last few years, they might be the best 3rd wild card team since they put this in, because of their talent, because of their roster, because of Lamar. you could easily see them go all the way, right, and win the Super Bowl. You could easily see them as a third wild card team, maybe at 9-8 or even 8-9, and go all the way and win the Super Bowl. But it might be a long shot even so, but you could still see them going because they're that talented and they have the guys, they have players. But we're a long way from that right now. We're a long way from that. We are a long way from that. They got to fix this, get everybody back, regardless of whether they win or lose on Sunday. For the Ravens, you hope it's a win. You can pull out an upset. But after that, you got to take the bye week, bring everybody together, get your guys back, and say, let's go on a run. Let's win because it is still a team capable of getting hot and winning a lot and winning. So you take it one game at a time, one quarter at a time, one play at a time, get your guys back and go on a run and hopefully be 7-5 or even 8-4, or even 8-4. If you can pull off a win on Sunday by the time you face the Steelers on December 7th. But that requires you winning all of those games after the bye week. That requires you winning all of those games after the bye week. No more slips. Can't slip and fall. And they have 3 straight road games. If I'm correct, they have 3 straight road games. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland. All winnable, but all on the road. And one of the toughest things to do in the NFL is winning a game on the road. It is so many players and so many coaches and so many people have said in the NFL, the toughest thing to do in this league is to win a game it's tough to win in the NFL period, but to win a game on the road, that is really tough. But they have to do that 3 straight times because they have 3 straight road games. So, but again, they'll be favored. They'll be favored to win those games if they can just get their guys back and get healthy and start playing better. They'll be favored in those games. They'll be favored. So the Ravens season, I think, begins after the bye week. They may be 1-5 going into the bye, and people may be saying the season's over. But again, I see it and I go, they could still make a run. Their season, their test, their battle to the playoffs, their road to the playoffs now begins this week and after the bye week. This is the toughest task for them, I think, in the Lamar Jackson era since he became the quarterback back in 2018. So it's a tall road, but I do think it's a tall road and they got to get the train back on the tracks, but I think they can because they still got players on this team. This is still a team that's capable of winning. They just got to go out there and play much better than the way they played, much better, and show some battle, show some fight, show some pride, show some toughness, because these last 3 games have been absolutely embarrassing. I mean, all 4 losses have been embarrassing, but the last 3 have been really bad. Ran over by the Lions, embarrassed by the Chiefs, embarrassed by the Texans. It's been that bad. So you even if you lose on Sunday against the Rams, play better than the way you did. Show some pride. Show some fight. Show some battle this Sunday, because you can't play like that again. You can't. Especially if you want to get the fans back. But the fans are tired. The fans are tired. The fans are just are not happy right now. The fans have lost trust in you. The fans have just kind of groaned at you at this point. To get your team and to get the city and to get the fans back, you got to show some battle at least. So this Sunday, they've got to play better and play with some battle. And then after the bye week, you got to make your run. Got to make your run. So we'll see how they do. And if things continue, and so we'll see how they do. We'll see how they do. We'll see how they do. We'll be back tomorrow for another MazzaOnSports. Next show, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Jets. There's not really much to talk about. This is an 0-5 football team. It's an 0-5 football team that is just not, that's a player thing. I don't think it's a coaching thing. That's a player thing. And the fact that they continue to struggle with penalties and turnovers and just lack of cohesion on both sides of the ball. We'll talk a little bit about the Jets tomorrow. We'll get into Major League Baseball playoffs. We'll talk a lot about the Yankees and their playoff exit and how the Toronto Blue Jays and how they've done. We'll preview the ALCS because Game 5 tonight is actually we'll preview. You know what? Before we sign off for today's show for tomorrow, before tomorrow's show, we'll do a quick couple of predictions for the MLB playoffs. I think the Dodgers win tonight. The Dodgers, it's Game 4 tonight. They lost last night to the Phillies. I think tonight they win I think Tyler Glasnow, is pitching. He's facing Christopher Sanchez. I think the Dodgers win tonight and clinch another berth to the NLCS. Milwaukee, do the Cubs and Brewers play today? Yes, they do at 9:00. Pitching matchup for that game is Matthew Boyd against Freddie Peralta. Same thing. I think the Brewers win tonight and close that series out, go to the NLCS. And, of course, the big one tomorrow night, 8:00, Tigers-Mariners Game 5 in that series at Seattle. It's going to be an electric atmosphere, I'm sure, in Seattle. It's going to be Tarek Skubal against, the Mariners have not announced a starter yet. I'm looking through MLB.com. They haven't announced a starter yet for that game. I got to think it's going to be I'm looking. Yeah, it still doesn't know. Man. It says, I'm looking at it here. It says Mariners bullpen will be key element for Game 5. This is an article on MLB.com. Boy, I don't like the Mariners. I know the Blue Jays just want. Look, I know this is where baseball is at now. I should talk more about this tomorrow, but I know the Blue Jays just won a bullpen game. I'll talk more about this tomorrow. The Blue Jays just won a bullpen game. The Dodgers infamously won a couple bullpen games. But I'm just not a bullpen game guy in the playoffs. I'm just not. I don't like throwing bullpen games, especially in Game 5 when the season's on the line, But, boy, it looks like the Mariners could throw a bullpen game, so that'll be interesting. But we'll save that. We'll talk more about that game tomorrow night between the Mariners and the Tigers. Should be an interesting one, Game 5. But I think the Cubs win. I think the Brewers win tonight to advance to the NLCS. I think the Dodgers win tonight to advance to the NLCS. I think we get Dodgers Brewers in the NLCS, and we'll see what the Blue. And I'll give my prediction for the game for the Tigers Mariners game tomorrow night, and whoever faces the Blue Jays. Toronto's great. Look, that's a great team. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow. So we'll talk Jets tomorrow. We'll talk Yankees tomorrow. And we'll talk more about the MLB playoffs and maybe even dig a little deep into the NBA and their season about to begin, and even talk maybe a little bit about the NHL. Rangers, obviously, like I said, lost 3-0 to the Penguins the other day. The Rangers play tonight against the Buffalo Sabres tonight, and the Islanders and Devils open up their season. So maybe we'll talk more about the hockey. We'll talk more about the NHL and a little bit about the New York teams too around here, especially the Rangers. But that's going to be it for today for MazzaOnSports. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening and watching. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you guys all tomorrow night. We'll see you guys all tomorrow. Have a great day. Catch you tomorrow.